What if the film that made an entire generation of black audiences feel proud and seen on the big screen was almost never made? What if the Sunday dinner table that felt so warm and so real was built by a young director who had already watched one version of his dream collapse before the cameras ever rolled? Soul Food arrived in September 1997 and changed something in black cinema permanently. It proved that a story about a black family in Chicago, built on love and Sunday dinners and real human mess, could draw an audience and earn real respect. But the story behind that film is one most fans never looked into. Today on Timeless Black Icons, we are pulling back the curtain on what the Soul Food cast reveals that most fans never figured out. Here is what the Soul Food cast reveals that most fans never figured out. The director who refused to wait for Hollywood the story of Soul Food begins not in Los Angeles, but in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where a young man named George Tillman Jr. watched Cooley High and Taxi Driver and decided that making films was what he was going to do with his life. He studied at Columbia College Chicago, made a short film called Paula about a teenage black single mother that won a Student Academy Award and a Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame Award, and used that recognition to raise money with his college friend Robert Teitel for a full feature called Scenes for the Soul. They filmed it in Chicago in 30 days on $150,000. Then they drove to Los Angeles and sold it to Savoy Pictures for $1 million. And then Savoy went bankrupt, and the film never came out. Most people would have stopped there. George Tillman Jr. went back to Chicago and wrote Soul Food instead. The script was loosely based on his own family, the Sunday dinners his grandmother prepared, the bonds and fractures of an extended black household in the Midwest. He and Teitel took it to 20th Century Fox, who passed. They took it to Fox 2000 and Fox Searchlight. Both passed. Eventually, the script found its way to Kenneth Babyface Edmonds and his wife Tracy, who were looking for the right project to launch their new production company. They believed in it immediately and negotiated Fox into underwriting the film for approximately $6.5 million. What most fans never figured out about the Soul Food cast is how close the whole thing came to falling apart before a single frame was shot. Fox wanted a more experienced director behind the camera. Tillman was 27 years old and had never directed a studio film. The Edmonds pushed back, and the studio changed its mind after viewing his earlier work. Then the schedule itself almost collapsed. The three lead actresses, Vanessa Williams, Vivica A. Fox, and Nia Long, all had other commitments that would have made them unavailable if production had waited until 1997 as originally planned. Tracy Edmonds pushed to accommodate all three schedules simultaneously rather than risk losing any of them. Filming began in October 1996. The entire film was shot in 30 days. That Sunday dinner table that felt so lived in and so real was built in a month by a director nobody in Hollywood had wanted to bet on. Soul Food grossed $43 million on a $6.5 million budget. George Tillman Jr. had been right about his own story the whole time. Before moving ahead, take a quick second to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for the next story. Vanessa Williams and the weight she carried to that set Vanessa Williams came to Soul Food carrying more personal history than most audiences sitting in that theater in 1997 understood. She had been the first African-American woman crowned Miss America in 1984, a moment that should have been a clean and celebrated milestone. Instead, it became one of the most public humiliations in the history of American entertainment when Penthouse magazine published nude photographs taken of her without her knowledge before her pageant win. She was forced to resign her crown. 32 years later, during the Miss America 2016 pageant, she received a formal public apology for the way that situation had been handled. But in 1997, she was still the woman who had lost the crown, still navigating an industry that had watched that happen and formed its opinions accordingly. What most fans never figured out is how much Vanessa Williams had already rebuilt by the time Soul Food came along. She had released music, made her Broadway debut in Kiss of the Spider-Woman in 1994 to strong reviews, appeared in the film Eraser with Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1996, and had been methodically demonstrating her range across multiple platforms for over a decade since the pageant scandal. She also divorced in 1997, the same year Soul Food was released, ending a marriage to publicist Ramon Hervey II, who had originally been hired to help manage her public image after the resignation. She was a woman in the middle of rebuilding her personal life while delivering one of the most acclaimed performances of her career. Her portrayal of Terry Joseph, the oldest sister and successful attorney who bankrolled her family and felt taken for granted in return, earned her the NASP Image Award for Outstanding Actress in a Motion Picture. The character was not easy to like. Terry was controlling, unsentimental, and so invested in keeping the family financially that she had stopped investing in her own marriage. The scene where she confronts her husband and cousin has become one of the most quoted moments in the film. What most people did not know at the time is that the delivery audiences heard was largely improvised. The raw edge of that confrontation came from a woman who knew something about public betrayal and private pain, and who had spent 15 years learning how to transform that into something the screen could hold. After Soul Food, Vanessa Williams went on to Ugly Betty, where her role as the villainous Wilhelmina Slaughter reminded a new generation of how wide her range actually is. Vivica A. Fox, in the role that changed everything. Vivica A. Fox came into Soul Food at a specific pivot point in her career. She had been working steadily through the early 90s in television and film, building a reputation without ever quite breaking through to the level her talent suggested she should be at. She had appeared in Booty Call and Batman and Robin in the same year as Soul Food, and she had competed with Nia Long years earlier for a soap opera role that she ultimately won. The two women kept running into each other professionally, and Soul Food put them in the same family for the first time in a way that gave both of them a platform neither had been handed so directly before. What most fans never figured out is how personally Vivica approached the role of Maxine. In interviews, she has said she drew directly from her real older sister Shuggie, the person in her own family who functioned as the glue holding everyone together. She carried that specific emotional knowledge into every scene. Maxine was the middle sister who had married her older sister's former boyfriend, who had a child to raise, who was always in somebody's business because that was how she showed love, and who fought with Terry in ways that were as much about competing visions of family loyalty as they were about any single conflict. Vivica brought that character to life from the inside out, not from a script description. The film launched her into a different category of visibility. She followed Soul Food with Kill Bill, Two Can Play That Game, and over 100 additional film and television projects in the years since. She has spoken about wanting to take on more producing and directing work as her career continues, and she has delivered on that ambition. At the film's 2024 reunion on Good Morning America, she sat alongside Vanessa Williams and Michael Beach with a kind of ease that comes from a shared experience that actually mattered. What most fans never figured out is that the warmth between those three people on that couch was built in 30 days of filming in 1996 and has simply never left. Nia Long and the bond that lasted decades. Nia Long arrived at Soul Food with a body of work that already meant something. She had been in Boys in the Hood, Friday, and Love Jones before the film was made, building a specific kind of credibility in black cinema that made her an essential part of what the Joseph family needed to feel authentic. Her character Bird was the youngest sister, the one who seemed most vulnerable and most hopeful at the same time, the one whose love story with Lem gave the film some of its most emotionally direct scenes. What most fans never figured out is how naturally the sisterhood between Nia Long, Vivica A. Fox, and Vanessa Williams translated off-screen. Nia has said in interviews that she loves Vivica like a real sister, and that when they see each other, no matter how much time has passed, it feels immediate. That is not something that happens on every film set. It happened on this one because the material called for it, and the three women brought enough of themselves to the work that something real took root during those 30 days. Nia also noted in a 2012 Essence interview that she actually knows how to do hair from her grandmother, one of the first black women to own a beauty salon in Brooklyn, which means Bird's hairdresser occupation was not entirely foreign territory for her. After Soul Food, Nia Long built one of the most consistent careers in black film and television. Her role as Jordan Armstrong in the Best Man franchise across multiple films gave her a character she returned to over many years. She won NAACP Image Awards for her work on Third Watch. Her personal life became publicly painful when her longtime partner and NBA coach Ime Udoka's infidelity became news in 2022 during the Boston Celtics season. She handled that period with a composure that the situation did not require from her, but that she maintained regardless. Nia Long has been one of the most reliable presences in black entertainment for over 30 years, and Soul Food was one of the films that established exactly why. Irma P. Hall and the woman who became Big Mama, Irma P. Hall, did not need Soul Food to have a significant career. She had been working as an actress for decades before the film was made, building a body of stage and screen work in Texas, and beyond that, demonstrated genuine range and real authority. But Soul Food gave her something specific. It gave her Big Mama, the role that audiences immediately recognized as something they had seen in their own families, something they had felt in their own kitchens, something real. The character was not a performance of a grandmother. It was a grandmother, and Irma P. Hall understood exactly how to make that distinction on screen. Her portrayal of Josephine Joseph earned her the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Motion Picture. She went on to appear in Midnight, in The Garden of Good and Evil, directed by Clint Eastwood in the same year, and in Beloved and Patch Adams. In 2004, she delivered what many critics considered the finest performance of her career as Marva Munson in the Coen brothers remake of The Ladykillers, a role so precise and so fully inhabited that it won her a special jury prize at the Cannes Film Festival. The industry took note in the way the industry sometimes takes decades to notice what has been in front of it the whole time. What most fans never figured out is how deeply the bond between Irma P. Hall and the young Brandon Hammond, who played her grandson Ahmad, reflected something genuine. Hammond was 12 years old when they filmed Soul Food and has said that Hall treated him like her real grandson immediately, with a warmth and a presence that shaped how he understood the character and the work. In 2025, now an adult and a filmmaker himself, Hammond is directing a Soul Food reunion documentary with George Tillman Jr. as executive producer. He reunited with Hall, now 90 years old and living in Texas, to film her for the project and shared photos of the reunion publicly. He wrote that her hugs and her smile were exactly as he remembered them, and that her presence in his life had been a reason, a season, and a lifetime all at once. Big Mama was fictional. That relationship was not. Mekhi Phifer and the career built in that kitchen Mekhi Phifer came to Soul Food as one of the youngest members of the principal cast and one of the least well-known. He had been making his way through the industry, but had not yet found the role that would define his early career for a wide audience. Lem Van Adams, the ex-convict who married Bird and spent the film trying to build a legitimate life while the world kept using his record against him, was that role. The character was sympathetic in the specific way that only works when an actor brings something personal to the performance, and Phifer did exactly that. The film launched him into a sustained run that included 8 Mile alongside Eminem, Paid in Full, and a long-running role on the television drama ER, which gave him the kind of sustained mainstream visibility that a single film rarely provides on its own. He appeared in the Bobby Brown story on Bet, continued to build a film and television career across multiple decades, and has remained one of the more consistent working actors from the Soul Food ensemble. He was part of the 2024 reunion on Good Morning America, sitting with his former castmates in a way that made clear the connection between them had not faded over 27 years. What most fans never figured out is that Mekhi Phifer's path from Soul Food to ER to 8 Mile is one of the cleaner examples in that cast of an actor who used a single well-chosen role as a genuine launching pad rather than a ceiling. The industry does not always reward that kind of intentional career building, but in his case, it did. He came into that kitchen as one of the less established names in the ensemble and left it as someone the industry was paying close attention to. Brandon Hammond, and the boy who kept the table together, Brandon Hammond, was 12 years old when he played Ahmad, the grandson who narrated the film and spent its entire running time trying to understand the adults around him well enough to save what they were in danger of losing. It was an extraordinary performance for any actor, let alone a child, and it earned him the NAASP Image Award for Outstanding Youth Actor. He had appeared in films before Soul Food, including Menace to Society and Waiting to Exhale. But Ahmad was the role that showed what he was actually capable of when the material matched his ability. What most fans never figured out is what happened after the lights went out on the Joseph family. Hammond stepped away from acting, attended Saddleback College, and began developing his own voice as a filmmaker and writer. His short film Summer Blame was nominated at the Newport Beach Film Festival. His script for Amaru won Best Screenwriting at the John Singleton Short Film Competition in 2020. He did not disappear. He redirected. He became the kind of artist who understood that being behind a camera was as valid and as meaningful as being in front of one. Now he is directing a Soul Food reunion documentary, executive produced by George Tillman Jr., that will take audiences behind the scenes of the original film and bring the surviving cast back together in a formal and documented way for the first time since 1997. The boy who played Ahmad at the family dinner table is now the filmmaker holding the camera at the reunion. That full circle is not something that happens by accident. It happens when someone has always understood what that table meant and has been protecting that understanding quietly for nearly 30 years. Brandon Hammond was never just a child actor who aged out of the spotlight. He was always someone who was going to find his way back to this story. And there you have it. Soul Food gave black audiences in 1997 something they had been waiting for. A family on the big screen that looked like theirs, loved like theirs, and fell apart and came back together in ways that felt completely real. Behind that feeling was a director who had been rejected by every studio he approached and filmed the whole thing in 30 days anyway. Behind it were performers who brought their real histories, real pain, and real warmth to a table that the industry had not wanted to build. The Sunday dinner was fictional. Everything that made it feel true was not. Now we want to hear from you. Which member of the Soul Food cast surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments, because on Timeless Black Icons, every story deserves to be told. And if this video gave you something, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell right now, because the real stories behind the icons are always just getting started.